Well, good evening, everyone. Um, Sean here with another Genetry live stream. Hey, that's something new that I can say now. I don't know what that is, but anyways, streaming from my phone again. Nothing has changed in the background. I still have tons of boxes. Uh, I just can't see throwing them away, even recycling them when I can actually use them. Um, a lot of these boxes are basically brand new, so no point in throwing them away. But I had so much fun with the live stream last, what was it, Saturday? So only a couple days ago, that I decided I would do another one, answering some questions real quick because it is getting kind of late here for me at least. I do have one more day of work to go before I get. I'm actually on vacation, which I absolutely need badly. It seems like every time I go on vacation, I uh, just work, but whatever. It is what it is. Got to catch up on some stuff. Um, but so there was some discussion in the last live stream. By the way, thank you for everyone. Uh, mm, Genetry Homestead is on here. Um, Obviously, if you guys don't know, that's Danielle. That's my fiance. We'll be married in less than a year. And I know that I'm gonna blink and it'll be here. It's the way that it works. As you get older, time flies, especially when you have 1,000 projects that you're working on all at once. But the discussion that we had last time that we were talking about was the whole split phase debacle, fiasco, whatever. Um, I had a nice long conversation with Jack yesterday. Yeah, it was yesterday, about the whole thing, what was going on, and they are going to be reverting back to basically what version 8 and older was. In version 9, they switched over most of their inverters, not all of them, but most of them. They she should do a live stream as well. But anyway, they switched over to um, the new style setup, which actually I happen to have one sitting back here right now. I know you guys can't see it all that well. Um, I did a long video on this, and I what I ended up doing was kind of explaining why exactly they went to this design. It was basically to protect the charger board. What the problem that we were having was people were, even with a 110 volt input, were putting split phase in, and granted the instruction manual could have been a little bit better. I should have got more clear because some inverters were 220, some of them were 110. It was confusing as all hell. And even I was getting confused. I mean, I seriously was, because I was seeing some of these inverters and thinking to myself, okay, can this handle 220 or I mean, we're talking about the charging function. So we're talking about you energizing the inverter with your grid to charge batteries or act as a UPS or whatever. That's what we're referring to. And by removing the L1 and L2 in to the charger board, which um, this just so happened to have, finally a real example here. So these charger boards here that you guys can see here, maybe you can see that. It's backwards to me, but maybe you can see that you got a 110 charger board. These are version 8 charger boards, okay? They're not version 9 or 10. You got a 110 over here, and then you've got a 220 to 240. All right. Sorry, guys. I don't know what the heck happened there. It just all of a sudden my internet went down. So as I was saying before, you've got this 110 charger board, and then you've got this 220 charger board. If you look at them real close, they look almost identical. The telltale sign that you've got a 220 is going to be that there's only one filter cap here on the 220, whereas you've got two on the 110. So what confuses a lot of people, and even confused me. I mean, I seriously was confused, and I had a back and forth with the actual engineer who designed this. There was definitely a language barrier there, but the back and forth about this doesn't make any sense. These boards look identical. They literally look identical. And so why is it this one can take split phase in to charge your batteries, this one cannot? It they look completely identical. So anyway, there was a lot of confusion. As it turns out, there are some subtle differences between these two boards here, and so it confused me. It confused you. Some of you out there who were trying to hook up your inverters in split phase for input to be able to basically double your charging capacity, because hooking up a 110 or 120 breaker into your inverter, most of us have a 10, 15, or maybe even a 20 amp breaker for that. You can get bigger breakers, but most of us don't have that. So in order to get the more amps, you would go to a double throw, a 240 breaker. Then you could, the sky's the limit basically, as much as your panel can provide you. So that was what was going on. So the concerns that we had, because I was getting these boards especially, these 110 boards, I'd get them burned up, and I was replacing a lot of them. There was a period there where I could basically look at the board and say, okay, need a new board, because they were just basically, they were being overloaded. Um, Also, they weren't being connected properly because you got equipment ground on the front, so people were thinking that the equipment ground is your N, so they were hooking L1 and L2 to L and N, and that was burning up the inverter because it was basically shorting the transformer out. There was all sorts of things that were going on. So to simplify things, what PowerJack did is they just basically they removed the ability to connect anything more than a single pole breaker into the battery tank. And what that did was that, as a side effect, as a consequence, and they could have designed it differently, but they tried to simplify it. As a side effect, the split phase ran away. How you doing, Navin? The split phase ran away from the inverter. So I honestly did not know that this was going on because I didn't have one of these inverters right away. I had a power tank inverter. The power tank inverter was a split phase inverter. The first line of power tanks that came out, which was the version 9, technically it was a version 9 inverter, had basically, it's identical to this version 10 here, except for the only thing they changed was the main board in version 10. They made it much more robust, which I do like this design. It's an improved design. But So what was happening was, once the power tank units came out and they went back to version 9 for the power jack units, that's when the split phase disappeared. It fell right off. So with that in mind, power jack, as I said, I had a conversation with Jack um, for a little while about everything that was going on and what I recommended that he do. And so he is basically reverting back to where version 8 was, okay? It's still going to be all this updated stuff here, but you're no longer going to see, I don't know if you can see that from here, this says 110. You're no longer going to see 110 if it's a split phase inverter, which means it's labeled as split phase. It's got a 3-wire transformer, which is a split phase transformer. Then you will be able to connect it with split phase in. They're going to design it so that you can charge it with 240 volts rather than just, thank you, Navin, rather than just, the confusion obviously is how do you charge these, the batteries, how you hook it up and so on. So when I get a new version 10 with the new board and the new setup, which they might call version 11, I don't have any idea. When I get that, then I'll write up an instruction manual for it. I'll hook it up to my own system and verify that it actually everything works fine, and then let you guys know. I'm hoping, this is what I hope, because there is a solution to this problem here. There's a solution, and that is a 240 volt board. Okay, wrong one. This one. Okay, in version 10. Okay, um, because they redesigned it. Of course, I don't have one here handy, but they did redesign it with version. I thought I had my version 10 boards out here somewhere. I guess I don't. Anyway, I got so many parts, but um, the goal is to have a plug and play type thing. But the problem is it's going to require some work on the customer's part. You can convert this into a real split phase out inverter. I've demonstrated it on a video that it does have split phase. There's noise on L1 because L1 goes directly to this front glass fuse. Again, I laid it all out in the video. So it would basically require you to create a connector end for this, or what PowerJack could do. Actually, they can't do that because it goes directly to the transformer. You have to make a connector end, so they would have to provide you with a connector end, and then you would basically rewire it so that L1 and L2 go into the charger board, and then your N, which would be the yellow wire, would go straight to the front here. Okay, and then everything else would connect as normal. There wouldn't be any other changes. Um, but again, that requires desoldering and then obviously connecting the transformer. Or it would be the transformer, or excuse me, the input. You've got IPN and IPL. That would then have to be changed on the front glass fuse. Would have to go in there. So yeah, it's a couple of steps. To those who are willing to do it, great. I don't know if PowerJack is going to offer any kind of service where they would basically have you send the inverter to me and I would do the work. I don't know. I don't have any of those answers yet. They're still drawing up one of these boards for version 10 now. I know that is in the works right now. I don't know how long that's going to take. And I don't know if they are going to sell these or offer replacements or anything else like that on these boards like this. I don't know. But the good news is that going forward, at least here in the next hopefully couple of months going forward, that hopefully maybe it'll be called version 11. That will allow you to be able to run these 240 boards rather than the 110 boards that are split phase boards anyway. I'm sorry. It's just, I know it's confusing. It confused me. I couldn't figure out what was going on. I didn't know. And I don't know if it was just a communication issue between the engineers, what they were maybe trying to accomplish versus what PowerJack wanted. Um, I had a lot of input in on that too because I was seeing, anytime I have a warranty repair, I write out a detailed what happened, why I think this happened, my opinion or whatever. And we were noticing a lot of these boards were burned up when they were coming to me. So the conclusion that we had is, and I actually talked to some people who had said I burned up my inverter because I plugged in 220 into it and it just completely burned up. So we had suspected that they were being hooked up incorrectly or possibly too much voltage going into the inverter. There was no blame on anyone because these instruction manuals here, I know they're hard to follow. I completely rewrote the PowerJack inverter manual. I completely rewrote it, and I did take this off, by the way. I don't know if any of you are upset about that. That's fine. Yeah, I took all new pictures. I did all sorts of things, and I created this brand new book about a year ago for PowerJack inverters, and they haven't installed it yet into any of their inverters because they've printed so many of these things off that they're still going through that supply. So hopefully soon. But if you want that, I'm going to try to figure out a way to get it up onto the website, genetreesolar.com. I haven't quite figured out how to do that yet. I know there's a way that you can create a file. It's in a Word document. I might be able to look at converting it elsewhere. But if you're interested in that book, if that helps you at all, then we can do that. Uh, no, single phase transformers, you can hook them up in parallel, but you won't be able to get two split phase or two half phase out of it. The CPU does a lot of making sure that the timing is correct on that, and you need to have two waveforms that are exactly 180 degrees out of phase. So if those two transformers would have to be 180 out of phase perfectly, and a lot of that is controlled by this board here as well as the CPU. So that would be difficult to do without redesigning a board or reprogramming the CPU to be able to accept that. So no, I don't think that's something that you would really want to try to do. But anyways, I think that was pretty much it for the split phase debacle. You know, I can I like I said in the last live stream, I'm telling you guys, I know that it's hard to believe. I know with the tensions that are going on right now with China, the trade wars and things that are going on between the US and China, it's a lot easier to just presume that there's ill will here, and I can tell you there's not. Um, ever since the beginning, I've been treated very, very well with PowerJack, exceptionally well, and they've given me an enormous amount of freedom and trust. I have tens of thousands of dollars, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of equipment and inverters and so on here, right here, that they trust me with. And there's a lot to be said about that they take my advice, they let me test things, I loan units. I'm working on projects with them. We're still working, finalizing the new LCD screen here, this brand new thing. This isn't so that I can make money on this stuff. This is, I mean, yeah, money is great. Obviously, I'm gonna make some money on this thing, but this isn't the sole purpose. Isn't to say how much money can we squeeze out of our customers. This is because I'm confident that this screen here is going to improve your life. It's going to improve the inverter that you have, and it's going to make it better for everyone who buys an inverter. So obviously the bonus is to have some extra money to be able to sell these on my website and have PowerJack also install these in their own inverters eventually. But I'm seeing the weak points in the inverters and the stuff that I can do something about. I will do something about. I'll work on that. Obviously, I can't make a bigger transformer. It was suggested that I buy a transformer machine and do that. That would be great, but I don't have the room for one. I don't. Buying the copper and all this other stuff. I mean, it would require an investment. Maybe someday. PowerJack is making their own transformers now. They do have their own machines, so they no longer source to third parties for their transformers. They are moving more and more in-house with everything, and they're trying to simplify things. This screen here will basically uh, eliminate like 90% of what's on the front of each and every one of these inverters. Uh, because everything can be done through this screen, and this screen can be powered on even if the inverter is off. So we are looking for quality of life improvements. Some of you I know say, what's the point, or why are you doing all this work for PowerJack? Believe me, I'm not doing it for free, but um, I see, based on having these open on the bench, repairing them, I see the weak points, just like probably a lot of you see it just by looking at the inverter, especially those of you who are savvy engineers, electrical engineers, and so on, who look at this stuff and you say, I can't believe this. But again, it comes down to price points, value. It's just uh, it's the way that it is. It's marketing from China. Good, bad, however you want to perceive it, it's just the way that it is. They make decent products, you know, that perform really well, and we can make them even better by doing stuff like this. Again, it's trying to keep things within a certain price point. There, a conversation that I had with Jack a while back about him making this ultimate inverter, basically one of those inverters that could definitely power. It would be like an Ames 15 kilowatt inverter, and we were looking at costs. PowerJack doesn't indulge me with specific costs, like it cost me X amount of dollars for this part, X amount of dollars. They don't do that. I'm not involved in that part of the company. That's private. That's their business. It's not mine. But I can tell you that in order to create using, if we were to use existing parts from PowerJack, okay, that means the charger boards, all the parts, everything on the inside of the inverter. If we wanted to make an inverter that could run all day, all night at 15K, it's 15 kilowatts. First of all, it would be a 48 volt only inverter. Too many amps to be pushing at 24 volts. It would require two very large AS9 or AS10, those new transformers that are in the pipeline. It would require two of those big transformers. And we would have to update the FETs in a way that they would be the larger FETs for more surface area for cooling. We'll do that, and we could get a 15K inverter. My cat is really mad because I can see half of his body's underneath the door because I closed the door on him. Hang on, I'm going to go ahead and open the door so he can come in here and visit. All right. You going in? But anyway, so anyway, the cost, the cost is, you're looking at $3,000 minimum for something like that, and to be honest, PowerJack, they've never sold anything that's been even close to that expensive. They try to stay under a certain price point for their inverters. That's their choice. That's their business choice. That's the market they're going for. That's the type of. You can come up here if you want. Um, so every company runs their business the way that they want to. I don't have any say in that. I don't agree or disagree. That's just the way that it is. So, um, even still, I can tell you that they are really trying to, obviously money is always going to be involved. Money is always an aspiration, especially if you're a business and you're trying to reinvest and reinvest, or you just want to make as much money as possible. Money is always going to be involved. So if anybody tells you, oh, I'm in it for the charity of it all, unless you already have a ton of money around, that's just not the case. And so PowerJack is making money. They're also investing money, and they're making money investing it, but they're keeping their prices at a certain point. That's their business practice. So, but they really do want talking with Jack, they really do want this green kind of thing. It's a new push or something. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's specific to maybe the area that he's at in China or something else like that, but he has a genuine desire to get people off the grid. He really does. And to us as Americans, we look at these inverters and we say, well, it's just cheap Chinese stuff. And to him, to China, it's more of an opportunity for a low cost to be able to get off the grid. Um, you know, you can go to other companies and get other stuff, other other products, and you can pay based on what it cost them, where it was built, things like that. And maybe you can get a more reliable product, maybe a less reliable product. But their business decisions are their decisions, and they have a plan. I am not a part of that. I don't make any of those decisions. I don't. I can suggest things. They're doing really good about absorbing some of the costs with the trade wars that are going on right now. Whatever your opinion is on the trade wars, so-called trade wars, whatever, um, that's one thing that him and I just don't really mingle with. We have a goal still, no matter what's going on, and as long as we can still do business with China, and China can still do business with us, then we're going to keep doing that. We have a good business relationship. He's always okay. Just come on up. Yep. Um. Uh, all right. Well, anyways. Yeah, I know. I don't like it when I'm not talking to you. But so anyway, as long as we have a good business relationship, we're going to continue to improve the inverters. We're going to continue to sell them at as low as a price as possible for people to be able to get into renewable energy, being off the grid, things like that. We do have common goals in mind. And like I said, this is one of my goals, something like this, to be able to improve on the inverter. And you could always say, well, why don't they just do this and this and this? Well, then your costs are going to start going through the roof. And that's not the point of their inverters. Their marketing is very much different than in the States. If we tried to market in the States, an American company tried to market, hairs on my mouth. If we tried to market like what they would do, it wouldn't work. It just would not work. And I keep saying it, the way that PowerJack markets their inverters, a 5,000 watt inverter will do 5,000 watts for seconds, maybe minutes, and then it shuts off. That doesn't mean that 100 watts it's going to shut off at the same amount of time. It just means that they rate them at their absolute maximum. Um, and yeah, that's just how they rate them. To you and me, we're looking at it like, well, that seems kind of deceptive, or that's bad marketing practice, or whatever. But that's just the way that they do it. And the amount of sales that they do and the amount of returns and warranties that I get is still a very small number. Um, wow, what a baby. He's being a baby, aren't you? I know. You just want to get in on all the action, don't you? My other little kitty's out there making some noise. Say hi to the camera. You're gonna go bother her. Okay, go find out what she's doing. Anyway, so I enjoy working with PowerJack. I really do, and I think the they can do what they want. My job is not to change your mind about Chinese products, PowerJack or whatever. My job is to be here for you guys here in the States and North America, to try to do my best to build products, repair them, warranty, make some improvements and things like that. You can always say, well, if they just did this and this and this, they'd have a great inverter, and then it would also cost twice as much. Just the way that it is. Um, so I can tell you that most people don't need 15,000 watts continuous. Some of you might. I'm not speaking for everyone. So don't, if you're that one person or two people or 10 people who needs that, uh, what fuse to use, and if you're talking about a glass fuse, you need an AGC. Uh, Hang on a second. PowerJack uses 3 in their glass fuse. PowerJack uses 3 fuses. Are you talking about the glass fuse here? This one here? Let me know. If you're talking about a breaker fuse for the battery, okay, glass fuse. Well, basically, it depends on the inverter that you have. If you have an 8,000 watt inverter, then I typically replace it with either a 30 or a 25 amp Glass fuse, that's AC amps. Okay, so you're gonna need a 25 or 30 amp ACG fuse. That's what it looks like right here. Um, and that should do just fine for you. Yeah, PowerJack still uses these for their inverters. They use the push buttons now for most of them, but the older ones still use these glass fuses. A 30 amp should do you just fine for that particular inverter. Um, and now my cat wants back up here. But so yeah, uh, not at this particular moment. I can't. Um, Send me another message, and I'll give you a call tomorrow because it's actually pretty late for me. Here goes my other kitty, who doesn't seem to care about the camera. Call her little girl, little girl, because she's about half the size of the other cat that you saw there, and she's full grown. She's just a tiny baby. Yep. She might come into the camera. I don't know. She's a real timid cat. But anyway, so I don't think I have anything else. Uh, I think that's pretty much about it. So I'll continue to put out videos. I'll continue to improve the best that I can, coming up with these ideas, things like this to help improve the design. As I said before, these will be available when we're completely done with them. These will be available as retrofits into your inverter as long as you have an LCD screen inverter. So a 4 kilowatt version 10, it'll go down to a version anything basically. Well, actually, we have it set up to program for version 9 right now, but it is compatible with the previous versions of the inverter for the most part. So I will be selling kits as well as fan kits. Um, Basically, it's a one size fits all with instructions. And believe me when I say that this is a huge improvement in features as well as reliability, etc. That's hopefully going to be coming soon. Um, I still do the inverter builds, and of course I have plenty of spare parts here. Lots of parts. Just keep in mind that anything that I sell, I always have to pay power jack. So that's important to know that I pay them. But I'm really enjoying what I'm doing. It's a lot of fun. I get to talk with all you guys, and we get to move in a general green direction. Not just being green, but being independent of the things that we've come dependent on so often. And I feel so bad for the people like in California who don't have a choice. Not everybody has a choice, even if you live in the country. I actually have some videos up of the inverters. There was one that I put up just recently. Now it doesn't have this yet. This thing we've got a few more steps to make before I can get that done. But so yeah, I think that's basically about it. I just mainly wanted to explain the split phase thing and answer any questions that happen to pop up real quick. It's getting pretty late here for me. So I'm going to be going to bed. I got one more day of work, and then I'll be on vacation, so that'll give me some time to try to catch up on more work. I've got that 3,000 watt inverter set up there on my 4 batteries. I was doing some load testing with it as far as pushing its maximum, and yeah, 1,500 watts for that 3,000 watt inverter was no problem at all. It never shut down. Um, yeah, I have to be up at 1 a.m. tomorrow morning. So that's why it's late for me. Um, but yeah, I've really been testing that inverter, doing load tests and so on, and it does perform better. Um, I don't know what the word I'm looking for. It's not. It's a 3,000 watt inverter, which is twice as big as the 1,500 watt inverter, but it performs better at the upper ends of the inverter. So, and I think a lot of it has to do with the cooling. So you can squeeze more out of a 3K than you can out of a 1,500 watt closer to its limits, its advertised limits. Yeah, I do sleep, or I try to. Um, Sorry, I missed those comments. It's hard to see some of these comments. A 15,000 watt inverter. If you're running at 48 volts, you're going to need a lot of batteries. PowerJack is getting rid of the 24 volt 15,000 watt inverters. Those are going to be gone. Um, and Batteries, man, if you it depends on how much you're going to be running. If you're going to be trying to run, let's say 7 or 8K, you're going to need a good 1,500, 2,000 amp hour battery bank. And it also depends on the batteries too. If you got gel, lead acid, AGM, lithium, um, it also depends on the batteries because the batteries can only take so much discharge at once. Otherwise, they become damaged. I'm not talking about depth of discharge. I'm talking about continuous discharge. Otherwise, they become damaged. They overheat and so on like that. So a lot of it just kind of depends. But the bigger, the better. And if you're not going with lithium, um, that would be lithium iron. If you have lithium ion, that's great. But if you're not going with lithium, you have to make sure that you don't discharge it more than 50%. Um, just because, well, flooded is the cheapest option. AGM is your more expensive option. Lithium is the most expensive option. But costs are coming down. So it's getting cheaper and cheaper now to get into lithium iron, um, and the memory effect is the big one. You can discharge them almost all the way flat, and it doesn't affect the life cycle of the inverter, or the not the inverter, the battery. So that would be the way to go, but it's also much more expensive, much more expensive. But it'll last you 20 years. So if you can do some videos, that would be great because I would love to see your setup. I really would, and I encourage all of you out there, whatever you've got. I don't care what brand of inverter you have, or what brand of batteries, or what solar you have, or wind. If it's a small little itty bitty panel that's sitting in your window and it charges a light bulb or something, great. Show me. I want to see it because I love looking at all that stuff. Uh, and I think um, another thing I was going to start doing, I really want to do renewable energy news on this channel. I am working on that. I'm trying to figure out the best way to approach that, either weekly or maybe every other day, or maybe Mondays and Fridays or something else like that. I'm trying because there's a lot of news, and I think a lot of people should know about what's going on, not just as a kind of like a prepper thing. Um, that's not where I'm trying to go with it. It's more of just information, like if a new panel comes out, new efficiencies, or new. I don't like to get into politics, but I think it's important in certain areas, such as taxes or restrictions or laws or regulations and things like that. I think that's important to share with people. Um, Renewable energy is a hot thing right now. It's really really hot, and there's a lot of we're disrupting the status quo here. And I'm not saying you can't have a good clean coal burning plant. You can, but we've done things for so long in a certain way, and the tax system is set up in a certain way, the income is set up in a certain way with municipalities and with local grid operators and all that other stuff. We're disrupting that. We are taking something that nobody ever thought would ever change, and it's a constant flow of money that's guaranteed, and now it's not looking like that anymore. There are some townships and counties and places that are starting to not punish directly, like, oh well, now we're going to write you tickets or citations or whatever, but they're starting to come down on people who have their own They generate their own electricity, either grid tied, off the grid, grid interactive. It doesn't matter what it is. They're starting to regulate it more and more to discourage people from doing it, because if you think about it, every customer that is lost, that's a tax revenue that's gone. That's a revenue for the power company, whether they're nonprofit or not. They still have to pay their workers. They have to repair the lines. They have to maintain the lines, distribution costs. All that stuff still has to be paid. But if you have fewer and fewer customers, where are you going to get that extra money? You can start charging more for the people who are still on the grid. That wouldn't be fair, because not everybody can be off the grid. If you live in a city, good luck. You can't get off the grid. So why is it fair that they should have to pay more per kilowatt just because everybody outside of the city is generating their own electricity? We're not talking about mainly grid tied, because grid tied setups, you're still at the mercy of the power company. You're it's all you're doing by being grid. Well, you're doing two main things. Number one, you're contributing to the grid in a renewable fashion. So obviously, um, non-renewables, there's less CO2 in the air, things like that. That's good. And number two, eventually you're getting paid. I mean, you are getting paid for what you generate if you generate in excess of what you consume, but the payoff depends on where you're at. In some states, it's better than others. It depends on the rate that you get from the power company, and it can take 8 years all the way up to 15 or even 18 years to pay these systems off. And in that time, you're still at the mercy of the power company. You still need a backup generator. Grid goes down, your panels are offline. Did that help you? No. And that confuses a lot of people. It really does. That, you know, for example, the California thing. A lot of people were like, "Oh, I don't have to worry about it because I've got solar." Well, as soon as the power went off, their solar went down, and the cheapest way to get into solar is to be grid tied. You pay up front, and or you take a loan, a renewable energy loan, or a loan from the power company or whatever, and then you generate the power to pay it off, right? That's the cheapest way to do it. Being off the grid, you have to buy the batteries, you have to install the solar yourself or have a company come out. If it's grid interactive, that's even more money. My phone is about to die, so I think I'm going to cut this. Oh, maybe hang on a second here. I got my external battery pack here. Let's see if we can get some juice out of it. Do we? Do we? Yep, there we go. All right, so we're charging again. But um, if you want to relieve your dependence on the grid, the only way to do it is to be off grid. That's why they call it off the grid. It's the only way to do it. You have to have your own batteries. You have to maintain your own batteries, your own equipment. Um, Grid interactive is an option, but it's going to cost you a lot more. And if you're hoping to get into renewable energy to profit, um, then that's fine. You can still do that. There's nothing wrong with that, but you're still at the mercy of the power company, no matter what. You play by their rules, and the only thing that you're doing in the end is you're just reducing greenhouse emissions. You are still at their mercy. Um, that's not to say that if you have grid tied that you chose the wrong path or anything else like that. But what I'm talking about is being independent of the grid completely. And that is quite literally turning off your grid completely and running completely independent of the grid. Um, and yes, you can have a backup generator. You can have backup batteries, but you're starting to add costs. You might as well go into the grid interactive unless you're only worried about a refrigerator. But what I'm referring to or what I'm talking about here is the independence of the grid, being off the grid completely, so that if your neighbors around you in the city, the state, the country lose power, you don't even know about it. It's just like business as usual for you, and everyone else around you is panicking. you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to say, well, now I'm going to have to cut corners, fewer loads of laundry or something else like that because the grid went down. No, you get to carry on with the same stuff that you did before the power outage. Nothing in your life changes. Um, yes, PowerJack does sell lithium iron batteries. I do have a couple of them here. I don't use them right now. I need to get a battery management system for them, but they do. But anyway, uh, so my long-term goal is to be completely rid of the grid. Literally, rid of the grid. That'd be some kind of tagline. Um, I don't want to be attached to the grid anymore. I don't want to be attached to their water system. I don't want to be dependent on some other um, township or whatever. Growing my own food, generating my own electricity, being able to take care of myself, family, things like that. That's the goal, okay? That's what we did forever until recently, until, the recent last 120, 150 years. That's the way that we lived, independent. Yes, there's some problems back then that we had. I'm not saying that was the best time to live or anything, but I'm just saying that we have the capabilities of taking care of ourselves, but we've become so dependent on the things that we have, the power that we have, the water filtration we have. Water's a huge thing. Oh my God, you don't live very long without clean water. You don't. You can't survive. If you don't, if there's a long term power outage, let's just say a month long power outage, where are you going to get water at? Because everybody else in your neighborhood, in your area, or whoever is affected by this power outage, they're going to rush to the stores. They're going to buy everything off of the shelf. Where are you going to get your clean water? Isn't it better to say, I have 1,000 gallons storage tanks. I've got reverse osmosis filtering. I collect rainwater off of my roof. I physical filter it. Bacteria filter. I do all sorts of things so that if everybody loses water for whatever reason, or it's tainted, or some other disaster, or whatever happens, it doesn't affect you. You continue on as normal. That's the point. That's the point of being off grid. Not just power, but water, food. If there's a food shortage, if there's a massive food shortage, it doesn't affect you. Why? Because all this time you've been canning your food. You've got it stored in a cool area. You've got enough food to last you 6 months or a year, and you can continue to replenish that food because you're growing your own food, maintaining yourself. You will when you buy a farm. Yeah, hopefully. The batteries, yes, they're in the other room. And my charge controllers. I got a bunch of footage all put together of my charge controllers, and I just need to get it all edited properly so that you guys can see everything. But it's dark now anyway. They're not doing anything. Anyway, I think me and the kitty are ready for bed. I am tired. I gotta go to work early in the morning. I'll see about doing the news. I'll keep you updated on projects like this. I'll keep you updated on stuff like this. And we'll keep moving forward. I appreciate everybody out there who follows me. You guys are all awesome, and it's fun to be in this group of people who has similar aspirations of being independent. And it's a lot of fun too at the same time. It's can be expensive, but you know, um, what was that one guy that said if you need it and you don't have it, you sing a different tune? Well, it's so true. Because if something were to ever happen, God forbid, we're in for a world of hurt. It's not just the physical destruction of us as a country from a foreign country of any kind. They can just hack our power grid and send everybody into spiraling chaos. That's all it's going to take. They don't even have to set foot on our shores. They don't even have to launch a missile. They don't have to do anything. Just hack our computers. That's it. I'm not trying to scare anybody. This isn't a scare tactic or anything, but it's the honest truth. Time and time again, we've come up against this where we've become so dependent on computers and so on, and the people who are in charge don't do a very good job protecting those. And I think there should be specific laws that are requirements. If you run a nuclear power plant, you should have ironclad Amazon Web Service type security on your nuclear power plant. But as it is right now, you can basically set up with a laptop and Wi-Fi and log into their system, and it's terrible. It's just terrible, and it's not just America; it's all the countries out there. Um, so anyway, all right. Again, I appreciate everything. I'll come up with a schedule so that we can do some more of these live streams and we can talk about different things, anything you guys want to talk about. And I appreciate all the support. And of course, the website genetreesolar.com. Um, you know, everything that you want is there, and or everything you need, that is. All right. Excuse me. So stay in touch and stay with me on these projects we got going on here, and I'll just keep on going. So thanks again for all your support. Good night, everybody, and take care.